Bismillah. This is Muhammad Nasruddin, and today's session is about alcohol drinking penalty in Islam. First, let us look at Quran verses mentioning alcohol. In Surah 2, verse 219, it states, يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. The translation is, O Muhammad, they ask you concerning alcohol drink and gambling. Say, in them is a great sin and some benefit for people, but the sin of them is greater than their benefit. Here Quran brings heat on the pros and cons of alcohol drinking, stating that its sin and harm is much more than its benefit, which is also a scientific fact. Then, in another verse, Quran asks us to avoid alcohol and tell us about alcohol, social and religious hazards. In Surah 5, verse 92, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون وأطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول واحذروا فإن توليتم فاعلموا إنما على رسولنا البلاغ المبين. The translation is, O you who believe, intoxicants, all kinds of alcohol drinkings, gambling, al-ansab, al-azlam, these are arrow games used for seeking luck or decision, are abomination of Satan. So avoid that abomination in order that you may be successful. Satan wants only to excite enmity and hatred between you with these intoxicants, that's alcohol drinking and gambling, and hinder you from the remembrance of Allah and from al-salah, the prayer. So will you not then abstain and obey Allah and the Messenger Muhammad and be aware? Then if you turn away, you should know that it is our messenger duty to convey the message in the clearest way. We can see from this verse that God has asked believers to avoid alcohol and informed those who turn away and not avoid alcohol that it is the duty of the messenger to convey the message in the clearest way, al-balagh al-mubin, but did not mention any alcohol penalty. Then, suppose that someone does not avoid alcohol and gets drunk. Then, in this case, Quran instructed him not to pray until he gets sober once more. In Surah 4, verse 43, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى حتى تعلموا ما تقولون. The translation is, O you who believe, approach not al-salah, that's the prayer, when you are in a drunken state, until you know the meaning of what you utter. Note in this verse that Quran has mentioned the case when a believer disobeys Quran instructions and gets drunk, and did not mention any drinking penalty, but just commanded them not to pray while they are drunk. Then, someone may ask this question, what about the thought that there is a lashing penalty for drinking alcohol in Islam? Well, Quran asks us to avoid alcohol, but neither the Quran nor the very reliable hadith invokes a penalty for alcohol consumption. The question then is, how did the penalty for alcohol consumption come about? The story is that it occurred during the time of the second Khalifa Umar ibn al-Khattab. There was a companion, which is a Sahabi of the Prophet. And this companion was a heavy drinker. And he would walk the streets of Medina, drunk at night, and loudly shout scandalous things about people, including the slandering of chaste women. The inhabitants of Medina complained, and Umar ibn al-Khattab, the Khalifa, formed a committee to decide what to do with this man. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, based on the man having committed slander of chaste women, suggested the penalty of slandering chaste women, whose maximum penalty is 80 lashes. Thus the penalty was actually for slandering, which resulted from getting drunk, and not a penalty for alcohol consumption by itself. Now the question, according to Islam, should there be a penalty for alcohol drinking? The answer is that. Even in countries where alcohol is sold almost everywhere and in supermarkets, as in USA or Europe or elsewhere, and alcohol is considered to be more or less a social habit to have some glasses or so. Still, in these countries and in these places, there are very strict laws that punish driving or working in many professions under the influence of alcohol. The Quran did not specify a penalty for alcohol drinking. However, the Islamic law, Sharia, aims for the benefit and protection of the society. Thus, and since alcohol consumption can lead to improper behavior, aggression, and violence acts, thus the government in a Muslim society should enact preemptive penalty laws aiming to control alcohol and drug consumption so as to prevent such improper acts, where the Islamic criteria for these penalty laws, that these laws should be fair and just and deterrent. At the end of my session, I thank you for the good listening, and I greet you as in Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.